Hey guys, it's Miss Landry, and I'm still homesick. As you can hear, my voice doesn't sound great. COVID is kicking my butt for sure. I hope you guys had a really good time on your trip to Estes Park. And let's get started. I want this video to be pretty short. We're going to be looking at relationships in ecology. So, how do different populations interact with each other? My goals for this video are threefold. First, you should be able to identify, define, and explain the four main ecological interactions. Interactions in relationships are I'm going to use them interchangeably. I also want you to be able to identify when an organism benefits and when an organism does not benefit. So, pros and cons of the relationships. And then finally, I want you to be able to describe each relationship with an example. So I'm going to give you an example right now. Here's three. So here you can see predator-prey relationship with this beautiful tiger. Here we have, I would call this a mutualistic relationship in which this butterfly is pollinating. And then here we have another mutualistic relationship with the sea anemone and the clownfish. So I want you to get in the habit, when I ask you to identify the relationship, start by deciding, does organism A have a benefit or is it harmed? Is the organism B, does it have a benefit or is it harmed? We're going to use pluses, we're going to use minuses, and we're going to use zeros. So the plus indicates a benefit, the negative indicates they're harmed or they die, and then the zero indicates there's no benefit or harm, it's neutral. So let's try an example. Here's an ostrich and a zebra. You may not know this, but they share an area. Well, I don't know. What am I going to say? Like a city? No, ostriches cannot hear very well. They can see well, they can't hear very well. A zebra, on the other hand, can hear really well, but can't see very well. And so they work together and warn each other about predators. So I would say that the ostrich gets a benefit because they're basically using the zebra's hearing. And then I would say the zebra also gets a benefit because they're using the ostrich's good eyesight. So I would call this pro for both. And so we would mark that, you can see here, as a plus plus right there. So that is an example of how I want you to identify the relationships. So the first relationship I want to talk about, there's actually three in this area. Symbiotic is kind of an umbrella term that covers three different relationships. So these are close associations between species. And the first one is called commensalism. And in this, one organism benefits. So organism A gets a plus. The other organism, organism B, isn't harmed, but also doesn't really get a benefit from it. Okay, so an example here is the whale. And on the whale, these barnacles actually attach to the whale. It's a positive for the barnacles because they now have a safe place. But the humpback whale could really care less if those were there or not. It doesn't even bother him. So as you can see down here, it's kind of hard to see. I'll put the focus on right there, and I'll close this. Right there, it's a plus zero. So all commensal relationships will have that look to it. Okay, mutualism is the next one. This one, just think about mutual, right? Like mutual respect. Basically, both are going to benefit. Now, in some cases, they're actually required for survival, this relationship. So plus plus, here's a couple examples. Here's a bee, and it's pollinating a flower. So both the flower plant and the bee are getting a benefit because the bee gets the nectar and then the flowers get pollinated. Here is kind of a cool thing. These little green, like, I don't know what you want to call them, green sacks down here at the bottom, those are aphids. And aphids produce a really sweet liquid for ants that ants like. So ants will actually collect a whole herd of these aphids and keep them protected in order to get their nectar. So it's kind of cool. Next, we have parasitism. I think you know what this one's going to be. One benefits greatly, the other one is harmed or can die. Here's a nice little example. I'm going to move me so you can see the other example. So this is an example where they used, I think this is a wasp that uses the caterpillars as a place to put their eggs, and then the eggs hatch and they eat their way through the caterpillar. Here, I don't know if you can see it in this picture, this is a fish that has a parasite. The parasite goes into the fish's mouth, eats the fish's tongue, and then acts as the tongue. But what it does is it actually takes all the food that the fish is trying to eat, so the fish will eventually die. So obviously parasitism, um, A gets the positive, species A gets the benefit, species B does not. So, all right, next is predator-prey relationship. We all know this. Even though it's similar, if you notice the plus minus, like parasitism, it is not considered parasitism. When you think of parasitism, I want you to understand that one of those organisms is taking the resources that the other organism needs. That's different from predator-prey, where the predator is actually taking the prey, not the resources. So it's a little bit different. So it's still plus minus. In this case, plus for these adorable little cubs, minus for this water buffalo for sure. Here you can see positive for the shark. I would say negative for this seal. And then we have one here. You can see this beautiful bird caught this fish. So predator-prey relationships can happen on land, sea, and air, all over the place. What's really important about predator-prey relationships is that they help keep populations in what is called equilibrium. So if you look here, the predator, I want to kind of get a pen here. So I'm going to start over here. As the population of the prey goes up, the number of predators can go up because there's more food sources, right? But as that predator eats more and more of the prey and the population of the prey drops, well, the predator is going to drop as well because there's not as much food and they're going to starve. This continues like this constantly. And if you were to look at this over time, it would create this line. And that is what we mean by equilibrium. So it keeps the populations in check. Okay, I'm almost out of voice here, so let's finish up. One more relationship I want to talk about is competition. Now, competition can be between different species, which we call interspecies competition, or it can be within the same species, which we call intraspecies. So kind of think about sports, right? You have inter-school competition, so between other schools and yourself, and intramural, where you compete within your school. So these relationships are a lot more obvious when resources are few and far between, and we actually consider these to be negative. Let me show you some examples. So here is a hyena and a beautiful big cat competing over the resources of this food. Here are, this looks like two dingoes, I think, two wild dogs fighting. So this first one up here with the hyena, this would be interspecies because we have two different species. This one down here would be intraspecies because they're the same species. And then most people don't realize this, but plants are actually pretty competitive. If you've ever seen a saguaro cactus field, like you see in this picture, you may not know this, but saguaro cactus actually put a bunch of toxins into the soil around itself so that no other cacti can grow there so that it gets its own resources. I think that's kind of cool. We never really think about plants being vicious, but they can be. All right, just to summarize, thank goodness, because I'm about out of energy. Starting with three main interactions, you have symbiosis, predator-prey, and competition. So those are the three main. Symbiosis has three types. You have commensalism, which is positive neutral. You have parasitism, positive negative, and you have mutualism, positive positive. Then you have your predator-prey relationships. Remember, that is not the same thing as parasitism, even though it is also positive negative. And it's really important for equilibrium. And then finally, you have competition, which can either be within or between species, and it's always for resources. And understand that resources don't have to be just food, it can be shelter, it can be mates, space, it can be a lot of different things. All right. So I think that is it. Let's just run through the objectives, make sure we hit all of them. First of all, define the four main ecological interactions. I think we did that. Make sure you can do a plus minus or zero for each of the organisms. You guys are going to be good at that. And then be able to describe through the use of examples. You've seen a lot of examples on this video. That's it for this one. You guys have a great day. See ya.